hello. Today I'm talking with Marilia Falsetti. We talked about how she loves helping people to become the better versions of themselves and what she learned from seeing her father fail. I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello everyone, and hello Mariela. Is that how I should? No, Marilia. Is that how I should pronounce your name?
Yeah, actually, it's pronounced Marilia.
Marilia. Okay.
Yes.
I'm on purposely asking it on camera and not in the pre-talk because I want people to also realize, like, okay, we don't always realize this. We have been in conversations over email, and actually, it was only when I started then I realized, oh, I didn't even try to pronounce it. So
Yeah,
that's also part, and I do think it's important to try to spend to say the name correctly. And let's also show a little bit where we are. And I'm in Ghent in Belgium, and if I'm correct, you're in the Netherlands. And it should bring me back to Dordrecht. If I'm
Oh,
correct.
yes, that's what I am. Yeah, very close to
Yes.
the forest.
Well, I don't want to give the exact locations
Mhm.
away. That's not the goal. But let's bring you back fully on screen. And we're here talking. It's almost 5:30 in Belgium, and I guess the Netherlands we have the same time zone,
Yes,
so
we do.
it's the same time. I always bring that up because I think it's interesting for the people, especially if people are from different countries, to know a little bit on where we are
Yeah.
time zones wise, and where people. In this case, it's rather close, but sometimes it's very far away. So before we jump into the questions, could you? What should people know about you? Could you introduce yourself?
Yes, of course. So my name is Marilia. I come from Brazil, but I have been living in the Netherlands for the past 2 years, 3 years. Oh, time flies. In the
Oh,
past 3 years, I came here with my husband, and we have a dog. So that's my family here, husband and the dog. I was a psychologist for 10 years before I found Agile. So I
hmm.
am a senior coach and psychologist. I have a master's in neuroscience. And as I was mentioning to you before, I'm really a brain nerd. So every conversation I can turn into a conversation about the brain. And I have all of these tips and ideas about the brain that can always share. So that's something about me. I really like neuroscience, psychology. I like talking to people, and I like helping people become the better version of themselves. Oh, sorry, I don't hear you.
You don't? Are you
Oh, I
hearing
hear
me
you now.
now?
Yes, now you're back.
Okay, I don't know what happened. Okay, now I'm back. Yeah, thank you. It's a really wonderful introduction. What I wanted to add to that is indeed the in the pre-talk, it was very tempting to go on already and start a whole conversation about brains and everything, so which I cut because I think it will probably pop up again later in this conversation. But I'm not surprised. Like I said also in the pre-talk, this is not the first time that it's happening. And it's usually much nicer to have these kind of conversations on camera. And when you say you came to from Brazil to the Netherlands, what brought you to Europe and to the Netherlands specifically?
Actually, it was the pandemic.
Wow.
Yeah, during the
Most people were stuck at home and you're moving a continent.
yes, I decided I'm gonna move to another country during the pandemic. So what happened is my husband was already working in technology by that time, and a lot of expats living in the Netherlands returned to their home countries during the pandemic. So there were a lot of open jobs, and he received an offer to live in the Netherlands and work here as a senior developer. And we felt like we needed a change because I think, as many people at home, the pandemic made us realize a lot of things about ourselves and about our lives. And one of the things was that I wanted to try out more. I wanted to experiment new cultures. I wanted to live far away from my family and see how that feels, being alone and having to solve my problems by myself. So that was something that we already wanted to do. And then with the opportunity, we moved. Oh, I think your audio is off again. Is it happening every time that I speak?
This is very strange because on my side nothing changed. Do you
Oh
hear
yeah,
me now?
I hear you now. But every time I speak for a little longer, I'm not hearing your microphone.
Wait, I'm now going to check something on my side. Um, Default, it's normal microphones. Everything is fine here. Is there is a tool I'm using? Is it turned on? Yes, it should be working. Um, yeah, I'm not sure if there is anything on which side it is. Let's keep doing it. Okay.
Let's keep trying, right?
Yes, let's yeah, it's annoying, but it's good that you tell me because that way we can find out if it's indeed is a problem more on my side or on your side.
And people can see
Um
that we are doing some experimentation live. So that's how you deal with a problem.
Yeah, well, there is that. This is always these kind of things. There is so much technology, so much different kind of tools that we're using, and I'm trying to not change too much, and this is why there is no auto adjust or other kind of tools using at this point, which was the case that I've used in one of the others where there was a problem. Whatever I wanted now, I forgot what I wanted to ask to you. So yeah, there was the opportunity. You jumped at that opportunity. You've learned it. And so yeah, it's incredible that you do that during the pandemic. Um, how easy was it to move countries during the pandemic? Was that yeah? Was there more regulations than others, or well, it's probably hard to know if it's more. But was that rather easy to get here?
Well, it was easy to get here, but once we got here, everything was closed.
Mm,
So for the first months after I moved, I had this impression that I really hadn't moved because I didn't know my neighbors. I couldn't go to the shops. I had to order everything online. And I still talked mostly with my family and friends in Brazil. So for many months, people were asking me, "How is the Netherlands?" And I would reply, "I don't know. I can only see it through my window. So I'm not sure how it is." I felt
did
like
it,
the first year I wasn't really moved. And then after the first year, I was really here.
right. So yeah, and I think for many of us, we worked from home, and but you were able to find an apartment. Did you find that when you were still in Brazil, or did you find it looking here, or how did that work?
Yeah, we found it when we arrived here, but the company that brought my husband gave us all the support with visas,
Ah,
with
right.
people who could help us find an apartment. So we had that going for us, and it was really a privilege.
Hmm. Yeah, I can really think that in such an environment, when everything is closed, that is really hard. But of course, if you have, um, yeah, if you have a company helping you, supporting you, that really helps, of course. Let's move to that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
I think my moving story is an example of that. Something that people don't know about me is that before saying no, I always say maybe. So if someone invites me to do something new, or if someone tells me a story about a topic that I know nothing about, the first thing that I like to do is really listen, try, understand, and then I say if I like it or not, if I want to do it or not. So I have done a lot of different things in my life that I learned that I didn't like, but I had to try before knowing that I didn't like. So I'm really open to new invites. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't hear you again. Oh, you're back now.
All right. Okay. So
I
I'll
think there
probably
are
have,
some seconds after I finish talking that your microphone goes out and comes back.
but yeah, I literally saw it moving here, so the microphone is definitely not out. But well, okay, maybe one thing to double triple check what microphone? No, it's talking to the right one.
But I hear you now,
Okay.
so
So yeah, okay. But I'll be taking more time after you talk to say something. Um, and when did you discover that you had to try out some of these things before you really knew if it was something for you or not? Is that something you did when you were young already, or is that later on?
I think it's something that I always had in my personality because even when I was very young, I used to go to all different kinds of events. I used to hang out with different groups in my school, for example. And sometimes I would go to an event where people would say, "Oh, I didn't expect to see you here." And I would ask them, "But why?" And they were like, "Oh, because you're." Used to be a geek at school, so they would say things. "Oh, but you're very geeky," or "You're a nerd." So we didn't expect you to be in a sports event, or we didn't expect you to come to theater group, or on a nature vacation. And I would always reply, "Well, I'm trying it out. Let's see if I like it or not." So I think I grew up with this idea from my family that I could try things out. And it's okay to not succeed. It's okay to fail, or it's okay to change your mind again. So I could really try things that I wanted to see what they were.
Is
Oh, you're
right.
back.
Okay. Okay. I do wonder if it's your headphones or whatever. I don't know. But we'll only hear it in the recordings.
Yes.
It's hard to know. Um, Failing is okay. That's something that usually a lot of people have a hard time with learning and understanding. Was that something that was taught that you had also in you? Like, or is that something you learned in school or from your parents? Or, yeah.
I think I'm very lucky because my father is a psychiatrist. So he taught me emotion regulation since I was very young, me and my brother. So we would fail and then we would address the emotions involved in failing. He would sit with us and tell us what to do with our failure. I was even talking to friends recently about this. We were talking about the situation after you get your results from a test back. And usually you're upset because you thought you were going to have a 10, but then you got a 5 or 8 score. And I would tell them that most of the work in my house happened after we got the results, not before. Because then my father would sit with us and ask us what we were feeling about that and how could we improve, what points had the teacher, for example, laid out for us to improve our skills, to have a better performance next time. And then the work we would have between one exam and the other was so much bigger than the work that we had before the first exam. So it was about considering failure as a result, and that result tells you something about yourself.
What it should be, and indeed what we wanted to do. But I noticed that, yeah, for many people around us, it's that kind of hard. It's the kind of messages I'm trying to bring to my children, but I also noticed that um, when they were younger, that was kind of easier, and yeah, teenage years and later on, yeah, it still feels harder for them, I think. So yeah, kudos to your father to succeeding in that and giving you that feeling rather early on.
Yeah. I think something important was that I saw my father fail several
Mhm.
times. He changed jobs, he opened and closed the company, he changed careers, and he always told us, "It's okay, I just changed my mind. I learned something about myself. I'm going to do differently next time." So it was not just about us, because sometimes there is a distance between the child and the parents, and you think that you cannot fail because your parents are going to be frustrated with you. But then you see your parents fail, and it's okay because the family is a safe space.
Yeah, indeed, that the family is a safe space. It should be. Unfortunately, it is not for everybody, but indeed, it should be. Let's move to that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, and you already said you're working in a whole different environment, was there something else you were destined to do when you were younger, or how does that? Yeah.
No, that's interesting because what I wanted to do when I was younger was talking to people. When people asked me, "What kind of profession do you think you're going to have?" or "What do you want to be when you grow up?" I would answer, oh, I want to talk to people, I want to ask questions, I want to hear stories. And then people would address that in different ways, I think mostly according to what they expected. So some people would say, oh, you're going to be a journalist. Or some people would say, oh, you're going to be a teacher. Or, oh, then a psychologist. And all of those were correct, but there were also all possibilities, right? So I chose to be a psychologist for a very long time. And now I'm a coach, but I think I could be many things because what I really wanted to do was meet people and hear their stories.
Okay, as a psychologist, you do hear the people, their stories. As a scrum master or working as a coach with teams, you also hear a part of their stories. It might be different stories than as a psychologist. It's interesting the way you describe it is like people in your environment said you could be this, you could be that. But what did you feel at that time yourself? Was there some desire for yourself at that moment, or was that mostly taking the impressions from others that what they wanted you to be?
I think when we are growing up, we don't really have all the information that the adults have. So you really look up to them for models of what you can do in society and how you can benefit them, how you can make the world a better place. So I do think that I asked a lot of adults, what could I do with that? And what do you think I should do with that? But then I learned to select from the answers the things that I thought I also liked, because trying a lot of things out, going to different events, hanging out with many different people, taught me what I like, what I don't like, what I can do, what I cannot do, and what I can do but I don't want to do. So I think some people told me things, and I said, well, this is not for me because this doesn't match what I like, what I prefer. But that's a possibility, right?
Why did you start saying this at 5? What age were you having these kind of discussions with people?
Oh, very late in school. I arrived at high school and I still didn't know what I wanted to do. It seemed like all my colleagues had all their life planned ahead of them. And I still didn't want to do one thing. I wanted to do several things. So when I was 15, 16, 17, really before I entered university, I was still having those conversations with the adults in my life and trying to figure out what I could do.
If I look around, many people at that age have that, but indeed, like you say, it might be in your circle that it feels like everybody has figured their life out. I do remember my oldest son when he had to decide on what studies for him. It's like, this is the most important decision. And I'm like, yeah, it's an important one, but there will be options later. There will still be other things to do. And how was that for you? Did you also feel like this is my most important decision, or how does it did it feel to you?
I think I had very good examples of in my life of people who changed their minds and did something different from what they studied. So my father, for example, for a long time he was a biology professor, and then he decided that he wanted to do something in medicine, so he started studying medicine and then he became a psychiatrist. So he hasn't been a psychiatrist for his whole life. I think I did realize at that point that it was not the most important decision in my life, but that I needed a starting decision from there. You know, I have to start trying something. I have to start attending one type of university, and then if I don't like, if it's not what I'm expecting, I can change. But you know, the first thing that you try as a career, I think that's a big jump, because in school you have all the disciplines laid out for you, you know what your classes are going to be, but then that's the first time that you pick your classes, you pick what you want to do. So I wouldn't say the biggest or the most important decision, but I think it was the first major decision, and that's a big step as a future adult, right?
And selecting a university in Brazil, how does that work? Do you have to apply to a university? Do they have to accept you? Because in Belgium you don't really have to do that, but I know in the US you have to. So how does that work in Brazil?
In Brazil we have one big exam. and everyone who finishes school takes that exam. And then, based on
Mhm.
that exam, the best universities open their vacancies for the students with the higher scores. And the students with the lower scores have other universities that they can opt to. So that was also something very important to have a very high score in that exam so I could go to the best universities.
And are you prepared in school for that, or how does that work?
Yes, the last 3 years in school, we just prepare for that exam. So everything in
Wow.
school is taught about that exam. For example, our classes are timed in the same time that the exam is going to happen. So we get used to be sitting during the hours that we're going to be sitting in the exam, and we have the same pauses that we're going to have during the exam because that's going to be a very important day for you.
And when you say exam, is that one day, or is that, how does that work? How is
It's three
that
days.
3 days?
Yeah,
And
so we
it's
have 3 days.
guess multiple tests, maths, the
Yeah,
languages,
multiple
everything.
tests. So we have math, chemistry, physics, and biology in one day. And then the other day we have history, geography, literature, Portuguese, English. I think I'm missing something, but that's the idea. And then on
And
the
and
last day, we have to do a very long text. We have to find a topic and find our arguments and write a 1, 2, or 3 pages text, handwritten.
do you get one score at the end, or do you have sub scores for the sub things?
You have sub
Uh,
scores for the sub
right.
things. So, for
Because
example, in
I
psychology,
yeah.
math was not very important, but Portuguese, literature, history were more important.
And I guess depending on what university you want to go to, some of the sub scores are more important than others, or is that a
Yes,
wrong guess? All right.
yes.
Okay.
The text is very important, the one that we write on the third day. So, you have to have a very high score on that text, no matter what university you want to go to. But then the first 2 days, it really depends on what you want to do. So, a future engineer and a future languages teacher, for example, they have to do well in different subscores.
Right. But also engineers, their text is really important. So
Yes, it
yeah,
is.
okay, that's interesting.
Yes, because in
That's
Brazil, we
interesting.
think that it's very important to be able to communicate yourself. No matter what kind of professional you are, you have to get your ideas through. You have to be able to use arguments that are evidence based. So that's for everyone.
Yeah, I like it because it sets the bar. At the same time, I can also imagine that people who have dyslexia or other kind of things might have trouble scoring high, but might be good for other kind of jobs. That yeah.
I'm really proud of education in Brazil because I think people who have dyslexia or other learning problems, they receive a lot of support. And
Hmm.
I was even watching a video on TikTok the other day about a girl who has ADHD and dyslexia. And she was saying that her teacher taught her to have some templates on her mind. So if the topic is a certain way, then she already had a kind of a prompt of how she could write that text to make it easier for her learning disability.
It's yeah. Think it's yeah, I think it's a world that is not completely made for people who are dyslexia, and we
Yes.
need to support them. And at the same time, yeah, we need to see what are ways, because I do know, well, first of all, there is a lot of famous people who are dyslexic and who are able to do whatever they want to do, and they
Yes.
might have support people around them. And I think that's really what we should have, in that way. And in a way, dyslexic is just one of the challenges. So that kind of brings me to, for me, that next question. What is for you your biggest challenge, and at least the biggest challenge that you want to talk openly out on the internet, and why is it a good thing for you?
Well, something that people around me know, but some clients and some colleagues don't know, is that I grew up to be a perfectionist. So people had a high expectation of me in my social environment as I was growing up. And in university too, I had a very good performance, but I was expected to keep that performance. So when I entered the career market, when I entered the work market, I had a very good expectation of myself. So in the beginning, as a young professional, I thought that if I didn't deliver 100%, then I was failing. And I could deal well with failure, but I was seeing failure where it didn't exist. And that's something that I had to learn to deal with. And it really took me in a growth path that I'm very proud of. Because then, through that path of accepting that less than 100% is not failure, and it's better to be done than to be perfect, I learned a lot of important things for me.
School, you also didn't get 100%, or on that important test, you also didn't score 100%. How did you match that into your brain? Because, yeah, you still did, maybe you gave 100%, but your score was different.
Well,
Or maybe you were just so, I don't know, very smart that you did score 100% on that test. I don't know.
I was very smart in the things that I liked and in the things that I
Mm,
was good at. So I think that also didn't help with being a perfectionist
right.
because, for example, I'm not good at math, but I know that math is not very important in my career.
Uh,
There are people who are better at that. So when I got, for example, 7 instead of 10 in math, it didn't matter. But I was the girl that always got 100% in languages and literature. So when I didn't get 100% in those tests, then I would beat myself for failing. But sometimes it was not a 10, but it was a 9.5.
right. And for you, it felt like you failed probably more than someone else who was struggling and who was barely making a five, but
Yes.
he or she might be really happy with that, and for you 9.5 is like, oh damn it, what did
Yeah.
I miss? And then
And we
you
would
start.
work to get the 10 next time because there's a half point missing here. And then I realized that most of the kids were not doing that. Most of the kids who got a 9 were just playing video games or going to parties after school, and I was really trying for that then.
Wow. And so and then you enter the workplace, and then you basically almost hit the wall, I would say, because it's very hard to achieve that, or very dangerous to go into a burnout. So how
Yes.
did you discover it, and when, how does that work for you? Because it's, I think it can be really putting a lot of stress on you.
Yes. I think the most important thing in a workplace is having good leaders. Having people who coach you to see what's expected and what's adequate. So I was very lucky in that way because my first leaders, when I entered the workplace, taught me that 80%, 90%, or adequate, correct is also a good answer. It doesn't have to be perfect. So I saw those leaders making mistakes. I saw them not delivering 100%, and they were still the best in the field. And then I started realizing maybe there's something here that I'm missing. There's a learning takeaway that's not about taking 100%, but about enjoying the experience of being here. Seeing that I bring a quality to this world that's not very quantitative.
Yeah, it's not. And was that easy for you to hear this kind of feedback and to learn from that?
I think every time we hear a different opinion, we always try to put that inside the puzzle that we already have in our minds about the certain topic. So when I heard that it's okay, you don't have to do 100%, I was thinking, no, that's not correct. But please tell me, why do you think that I don't have to have that 100%? Because I was still a very curious girl as a young professional. So I wanted to hear the different opinions, but I thought that maybe they didn't fit in my worldview, and they really didn't. So that was amazing because then my worldview expanded and I saw so many other opinions that I didn't hear about before.
That way at the world, and learn in that way. So really, really good. So that talks makes it really clear what is your biggest challenge, and why that was a good thing for you. Um, in the way you explain it, also what you said earlier on about your father looking back at exams that were maybe not good and looking forward to the next one and learning. I hear a lot of passion. I hear a lot of drive, and yeah, also in the pre-talk when you jump into these things, do you know where that drive is coming from? Where that passion is coming from?
Well, I think I learned since I was very young that our value in this world is related to how we make people feel in our presence. So I think the most important thing about someone is how people feel when that person enters the room, what kind of impression they cause on other people. And I'm not talking about admiration or power, but I'm talking about, do you make the world a better place? Does it make a positive difference that you are here? And that's what I always try to do in every environment that I am in. I try to motivate people. I try to make them feel easier and happier. I try to make it be like Marilia is here. We're so happy that she arrived. Things are going to get easier now. We're going to get safer and we're going to be more satisfied with what we are doing. So that's what really drives me. The impact that I have on others is the feedback that I need to see if my actions actually have a positive result.
Way it's I would say it's almost addictive, because yeah, you see the impact on others. At least that's how it feels to me when I see the impact with other people, when they flourish, when they get in one way or another better. That's really, um, and I guess that probably was similar to your when you moved from, or where you were a psychologist, when you work that way and working with teams, that is very similar, I guess. Um, when we look at both of these things, what I'm looking for is then what is your biggest achievement in everything. And what I've learned in this podcast when I ask these questions, basically this question gives you the opportunity to brag and to be really proud. Is that easy for you to brag? Before we jump into the biggest achievement, is it easy for you as a person to brag about things?
I think that things that I brag about are not the things that most people value. So
Hmm.
sometimes when I'm bragging about a big achievement, people think it's not so important. And when I have achievements that people consider important, I think they're not the main goal.
Hmm.
So that's complex to explain. So I think a lot of people are driven by their professional goals. And I think a lot of people are business driven. So, for example, when I ask people about their achievements, they usually tell me a promotion, an important role that they had in a company, or they tell me about their salary, about their jobs, about the company that they work for. So, it's very common for for me to hear people say like, "Oh, I'm a developer at," and they say a big corporation that everybody knows, and that's their big achievement. But I think the biggest achievement in my life should be about how I perceive life, not about the company that I work for or the role that I'm filling or the team that I'm working with, but how did I grow as a human being?
Yeah, can definitely relate to that. So, what is then your biggest achievement that you want to talk about here? That the current biggest achievement, because of course things will change and there will be more later on.
Yes, I hope so. So I think my biggest achievement was finding peace with what I do. I
Mm.
think finding that mindful balance between my personal and professional life, understanding that me as a person, I'm so much bigger than my role or my salary or my career. A career is just a little tiny bit of my life. But me, Marilia, as a person, I'm so much more complex than that. So my professional success does not translate my success as a person. And how I perceive myself should not be related to the title on my CV, for example. So that's not an achievement that a lot of people value, but that's what I'm most proud of. That now I'm a more peaceful person and I like who I am.
To be proud of, that you can say, okay, that is something I as I can see as an achievement. So that's is. And when did you think about that? When is that you said like, oh, I'm at peace with myself, and I'm yeah. When did you realize that?
So I had a very recent career change. So during the pandemic, when I moved here to the Netherlands, I continued with my clients remote. I was by then a therapist and a coach. And that's when I did my transition to Agile. In that moment, everything felt really new. And I didn't have any comfort zone in my new career because everything was new to me. Everything was a discovery. And I felt that my skills and my knowledge from before were not very useful in this new position. But then I realized that everything I did was building a path to get where I am now. And that's what I when I found out that I was proud of myself, even though I was beginning to be a junior in my new career because I came as a senior from my last one. And my whole journey was so rich that when I got to be a junior in Scrum, for example, I realized that I was proud of my journey and that I was really eager to see where it would lead me. And that's when I felt the peace.
Yeah, I can imagine that when you make steps, that yeah, that really is the moment when you look back at that stuff. So that is indeed um, a, a moment to think about that. Let's put it like that. That I can definitely uh, see that. Let's move to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Well, there's a song that I really like in my country. Maybe I can send you the song later and you can put the link for people to listen.
Really good idea.
Yes. So there's a song that says that if you want to talk, call. If you don't know, ask. If you want to make sure, try. If you want to do something different, try again. And I think that's the best agility tip, that if something doesn't feel right, do something different. If you don't get the result that you're expecting, then do another strategy. If you don't know something about someone, then just ask them. If you think they are not giving you the whole picture, just ask for more information. Because I think we spend a lot of times in our heads thinking about what could go wrong or what we don't know or how could it be different, but we don't really act on that. So I think going from your thought to your action, that's the most agile thing that you can do. Just try out.
So it's when we stay too much more in our heads, it's yeah. Um, we can do everything in our head, but action is what really makes the difference.
Yes, and everything is perfect in our heads because it's just us. But then when you go out in the road, there are so many people and they have different opinions. So you really have to try out in the real environment. You have to see what people around you are going to think and how they're going to react to what you thought before.
Right, and there is no way of discussing to make it better that will bring the same value as trying it out. And it's not like it doesn't that talking doesn't help, but it's there is much more than that, and trying out will give you so much more. Um, yeah, that's I really like that as a tip. Like, okay, let's start doing things. Um, Okay, let's move about to the remote part, and I'm really interested because you just said when you moved back to the Netherlands that you were still working with your clients remote. So, what did you learn at that time?
Well, I used to work remote with my clients before that was very popular in the pandemic. So in Brazil, I used to work in a clinic and a research institute, and we had online therapy since 2015. So five
Wow,
years before the pandemic, we were already doing that. And a lot of other companies were saying that, oh, they're crazy. What are they doing? This is never going to get to be a thing. They shouldn't be talking to people online because talking through video calls, talking through the phone is not a real conversation. So we were really pioneers in that area, and I was already working a lot remote back then. But during the pandemic, everyone was doing that. And something interesting that I learned during the pandemic about remote working is that because so many people were doing it, some studies started coming up about it. And one of the studies was talking about how our brain gets super tired of video calls. And that's something that I experienced working remote since 2015, but only in 2020 I read studies about it. And then it made sense to me that I really felt more tired having the conversations by video conference than having them in person, but I didn't know why. So I think that's something that a lot of people still don't know, but it's important to address that when we work remote, we are not doing the same thing that we do in the office at home or at another place. We're doing a completely different work. And then we need strategies to keep our balance between personal and professional life, to keep socializing, to keep having your relaxation strategies, because it's a completely different setup. And sometimes we just try to import everything we do at the office and it goes wrong.
And do you have any tips around that to make it easier to do so much remote work?
I think it's very important to know how your brain works and in all kinds of ways. So try to understand how your brain pays attention to things, how your memory works, how the light of the computers and screens affects your sleep and your general cycle, because we don't really know, or most of the people don't know, how working remote or working with computers affects their way of thinking. But that's something very important to be aware of. One of the things that I always tell people who work remote is try to be aware of your cycles. So try to be aware at the clock. How many hours am I spending sitting or standing? How many minutes have I been on this task? Because when you're in the office, for example, if we were having this conversation in a public space where you know more people, probably people would come to our table now and they would stop us and they would compliment you, or they would say something, invite you to a meeting. But because you and I were both alone in our offices, nobody has been interrupting us for 42 minutes. And that's not something that happens at the office. So if we really enjoy our conversation, we can be 5 hours here and we're not even going to realize that we are looking at the screen for 5 hours. I think being more mindful really helps to understand what you need, what are your body needs.
I think it is like you say, it's important to make these realizations. Typically in the office, we might be switching from one meeting to another. Online, we're in the same call, and I look at the same walls. I look at, okay, now it's getting dark, so normally I look out my window and I see I see my garden. Okay, now I don't see it, but most of the day I look at the same garden. So it is exactly the same thing. And I'm already lucky. Well, it's not lucky because it's designed, but I'm already lucky that I see my garden, where most people might be looking at walls. And indeed, it is important, the blue light that we're getting. My glasses filter them out so that I don't get problems with that, but people need to realize much more of that, and especially the screens, like you say. It's very tempting. I don't have my phone in my bedroom by design, because that's what I know will bring me peace, in yeah, that I need during the night,
Yeah, I think
in all
working
kind of things.
remote, especially from home, your home becomes your office. So it's very easy to work more, to work when you're stressed or you're tired, and you always find an excuse to work. You're always going to be, walking by the door of your office, and now I'm going to go to my desk and I'm going to do a little thing. I'm just going to send a little email before dinner, or I'm going to check my messages when I'm in the couch with my family. And then when you realize, you're working all the time, but you wouldn't let your company do that to you. You wouldn't allow, for example, your company to ask you to be in the office all the time. You don't live there. So we allow ourselves to work more and to work more tired.
I said we're not working from home, but it feels much more like we're living at the office because
Yes,
that's
exactly.
it. Yeah, everybody was online all the time, and indeed, like you say, we're might be jumping into things, and everybody at home was online. So yeah, there was for for school, for work. Well, I had a partner who had to physically work because she's working with people in a living group, so she physically had, but then she had to be fully masked and I don't know, zipped up in what is it, in suits, like space suits, felt kind of
Yes.
way to work. So that's another kind of um, hard, I would say, hard to different kind of things. But for most of us, indeed, it felt that way. And I do feel that during the pandemic, um, people didn't really realize what was remote working because it was different. It was under a stressful situation, and when people say, that didn't work for me, it's mostly had to do with the pandemic more than with remote work. And I think that is different, but that doesn't mean that remote work is not stressful. It's stressful
Yes.
in many different ways.
But I think working in the office can also be very stressful because most of the people used to work in the office before, we already have strategies in the office in place to improve mental health when people go to the office. But the strategies for mental health in remote work are still very new.
Mhm. We're still learning all together about what does that work.
Yeah.
And indeed, there is still a lot to learn there. That's very true. Let's move to that next question. What's a book that you have read that you want to talk about?
Oh, a book that I always recommend to everyone, despite their field, their role, their career, their preferences, a book that I think everyone should read is Nonviolent Communication.
And
Uh,
that's the book from
that's the book.
Rosenberg.
It's not a new book, so if you look for the
Hmm.
first versions, it came out on the 70s. And sometimes I recommend people to read that book, and they say, "Oh, but it's a very old book. Is there something new about that?" And I say, "Okay, so read something about that book that has come out more early." But that book is still like a Bible of communication to me. I think it's a very important book because it teaches not only to speak, but to listen and to have a dialogue. I first came through with this book when I asked a leader of mine. I told her that I had to make difficult communications at work. I had to tell people as a leader of a team some decisions that they were not going to like. And I said, "Do you have a book that helps to have difficult conversations?" And then she gave me a copy of that book. And she said, "Yes, read this book. It's nonviolent communication, and it's going to be so much easier." And then I came back to her after and I said, "It's harder now because I don't know how to say what I want to say. And I also learned that I have to listen and I have to consider and I have to put my emotions in the conversation." So first it seemed harder. But then she said, "Well, now you're prepared to have a conversation. Now it's not just a lecture." When she gave me that book, the TED Talks were starting, and she said, "Now it's not only a TED Talk, but you're actually talking to that people." And then I realized that there is so much more to communication than just saying what's in your head. Preparing the environment, saying your emotions, being open to accept the other person's emotions, being able to step in other person's shoes and see their perspective. This book is so much bigger than just how to have a difficult conversation.
Yeah, it's useful in so many different ways, even not difficult conversations. And of course, if you start to use it for difficult conversations, it's immediately the bar is really high.
Yes.
It helps in all kind of conversations, and it is hard to retrain our brains in different kind of ways. Yeah, definitely. I know that even, I think, I don't know how many years ago, more than 10, 15 years ago, that I read the book, and even still struggling and looking back at the book from time to time, because I know there's so much value in retrying out and these kind of things. So yeah, definitely there
Yeah,
is.
something about our brains that most people don't realize is that the way we use our words creates a connection in the language part of our brain. And when we change the meaning of a word, or when we try to use a word in a new context, we actually have to open pathways in our brain. So it's like you're going to a completely green area, a forest, for example, and you're opening a new road in that forest. You have to cut down trees, you have to destroy everything that's in the way to create a new way of way walking there. And then this book did this for me because I started using words with intention to actually show my emotions in that relationship, in that communication. And it made me realize that the way we speak about our decisions, the way that we name our emotions, the way that we rephrase what happened in a relationship is not telling just what we saw, what we heard, but how our brains are working in that situation. So it was really eye opening for me.
Could you give an example on where you used some of these things, if it's possible?
Yes, of course. So this book is very useful for conflict management. Sometimes I give coaching or I give training to groups and individuals about conflict management in agile. And I use this book as an example. One time I was talking to someone and they were telling me that when they arrived at the part of the conversation that they have to address their emotions, I always say, well, tell him or tell her how you felt when that event happened. And then that person said, I felt judged. And then I stopped him and I said, hey, let's talk about something here. So, judging someone is a verb. I can judge you, for example. You can judge me, but I cannot feel judged. Because when I say you said something to me and I felt judged, that's not my feeling. I already have a conclusion of what happened here. So, what I'm saying to you is not how I feel, but what I think you were doing. So I started talking to that person about their real feelings in that situation. For example, when they judge you, how do you feel? And then he said, well, I feel ashamed. I feel sad. I feel angry. And then I said, well, then sadness, anger, those are emotions. But judgment is not an emotion. And that was a big step for me when I started reading and applying that book because I realized that a lot of things that I labeled as emotions were actually me judging the intentions of the other person in the relationship. So if you arrive at a conversation with someone and you're having a conflict, and then you say, you judge me, or I feel judged by you, you already closed that conversation. You already burned that bridge. What you can say, for example, is when I raise my hand in a meeting and I give an idea, and then you say, that makes me sad. That makes me think that you are judging my suggestion. Is that what is really happening? Is that why you're making that noise when I give a suggestion? What do you think when I give a suggestion? What makes you have that behavior in the meeting? And then you're opening a conversation. You're saying what you saw, what you heard, what you felt. And you can even put the judgment, but you have to address it as what it is. It's a thought that you had. I think you're judging me, but I'm not sure because the only person who knows about what you felt, what you thought, what you wanted to do is you. So I'm asking you, can you give me the information to fill out the gap in how I feel and what I see? And that created a whole new way of thinking for me.
I could definitely see that. that is different kind of conversations, that it's different kind of ways of dealing with that. Really wonderful example, that I hope indeed inspires people to read the book and learn, like, okay, how could I apply and do this myself as well. Really wonderful. Let's move to, for me, one of the most interesting questions of this one. What question do you think I should also ask you, and what's the answer?
Well, I was thinking about that question, and I guess a question that I receive a lot and that people are very curious about is why a 10-year psychologist decided to work with agile teams. Sometimes people say I'm completely rare in that field, even though there are a lot of psychologists that did the same thing. Sometimes people say that I left a senior career to become a junior in another career, which I don't completely agree with because I think the skills are very transferable. So I do not feel junior in that. And that's a very interesting story that I would love to share. So, what happened was during the pandemic, I had a lot of clients that were working remote, and I started noting down what kind of careers they were in and what kind of problems they brought for therapy or for coaching. By that time, I did mental health coaching and I also did therapy. And then I realized that between 80 and 90% of my clients work from IT. And that could not be a coincidence, right? IT companies are not giving therapy as a gift. So I was thinking, why are so many people from IT searching for therapy or coaching? And I started asking them about that. They told me that they had very close deadlines, they had a lot of conflicts that management was not addressing, they didn't know how to communicate in difficult situations. So there were a lot of problems in IT that they could not address at work. And they brought those problems to individual coaching or to therapy because they needed help. So I started using my strategies, using my techniques with them, but they wanted something that they could also apply to their teams. They were asking me, what can I do so my whole team thinks more like me? So my whole team can see a solution to that problem. And when I started giving them solutions that they could apply at work, I started hearing a very interesting sentence. They started saying, "Oh, you say the same thing that my Scrum Master says." And I was thinking, who is that person? Why are they saying the same thing that I'm saying? So a lot of people, a lot of my clients started saying that, oh, yes, my agile coach said that. Oh, my Scrum Master always says that. Or isn't that in the Scrum guide? And I was asking them, what is a Scrum guide? And then I realized that there was a whole framework in IT that used simple solutions that were very similar to the solutions that I learned in 10 years of psychology. So I was very curious, of course, because there's someone in IT doing the same thing that I do with a different name. I want to learn more about it. And that's when I started studying Agile. That's when I did my career transition because I thought if 80% of my clients come from IT, and they need my psychological knowledge in their corporations, then maybe the place that I belong is not in a clinic, it's not in a remote coaching session. I should be in the companies because then their path to me is so much shorter. I'm closer to the problem and then I'm closer to be a solution.
Is there is is there a risk that you do therapy with your team, or how do you keep that difference there?
I think the most important thing, the most important difference between being an agile coach and being a therapist is that I solve the problems that people bring to me in that environment. So when I was an individual coach, when I was a therapist, people knew that was a safe space that they could also bring personal problems, family problems, individual growth. They wanted to grow their personal skills, for example, or they wanted to talk about medical and psychological diagnosis. But when I go to the companies, I'm very focused on finding a solution that helps them improve their professional lives, that helps to improve the team performance, the communication with managers and stakeholders. So I think the difference is how I approach their conversations, is what I bring to them. In that environment, for example, if someone addressed me for an emotional problem, a personal problem, family problem, I would say I do have the knowledge to help you with that, but I am not in that role. So I do think it's important for you to seek therapy, to seek individual coaching for that problem that you're presenting. But I'm here to help you with your professional life. So that was also a very important decision for me to give away that part, that very special part of my coaching and my therapy, because now I want to focus on helping people be their better versions at work. And I don't help them with family and personal matters anymore.
Yeah, I really like that answer because it's the interesting thing is you have the knowledge to do both, but you consciously decide not to do. And I feel really bad when I sometimes see scrum masters that don't have that knowledge that do try to help them because of course, yes, it is a problem and some of these people really need that help, but we're not paid by the companies to do that help. I think you have a much better chance of helping them indeed to say like, okay, there is professionals who can actually help you with that, and okay, maybe I could, but this is not the role. I'm not paid by a company to help that. Let's take that to another place, and then you can, other people, which is good because it separates the problems from each other. And of course, some of these problems are related to each other. One problem in one side has an impact on problem on the other side, but yeah, it's not the place to have these discussions. I think that's
Yeah, I think it's
yeah.
important to know what's your goal in your
Hmm.
role and to be able to set boundaries, to say no in a way that the person knows that it's not that you're not going to help them, but that the help they need is somewhere else. And I can even recommend them a professional. I can even send them the contact of a colleague who is still a coach and a therapist, but this is not the place. Here's the place where we talk about work.
I like that it's indeed it's not a no. It's yeah. I think, and that counts for all kind of help. When people ask for help, they some people have the tendency that they know what kind of help they want, but that's not true. Because if you would know what kind of help you need, you would have already done it yourself.
Yes,
That's why
exactly.
you're asking for help.
Yes.
And so the typical best help is something completely different than what people are that are asking for help are expecting. And it's really hard for people to understand that. It's like, yeah, and I had bosses, I had other all kind of people that I helped that would tell me this is how you need to help me. No, that's well, maybe there are other people who can help you in that kind of way, but I don't see the value because otherwise you would probably have done that already yourself, if you're capable. If it's just being the hands of someone else, okay,
Mhm.
that might be different, but still, then probably I'm not the right person.
There
I
is a
really,
sentence in empirical science that I really like that says, if you always do the same thing, you always get the same result. So sometimes people approach me and they say, I have this problem and I know the solution and I have been doing that solution, but it doesn't solve the problem. And then I tell them, so that's not the solution to the problem. Because if it
exactly.
was the solution, the problem would be solved already. You have to try something different, right?
Yeah, it's definitely. I think there is an example of Jerry Weinberg, one of the people who wrote. He's unfortunately passed away, but I
Oh.
think he's written 50 or 60 books, and one of them is exactly about that problem. I'm trying to come up with a title, but I can't. I will definitely add it in the show notes.
Yes, please, and
But
share
it's
it with me.
it's about a person who's looking, and part of the beginning of the story is a person who's looking for his keys under a light, and then another person helps him looking. It's like, okay, we don't find it. Did you lose them here? No, no, I lost them over there, but there is no light there, and here is light. Like, yeah, that's probably not going to help you.
Yes, exactly.
And that's a little bit the thing. Like, if you keep trying the same thing, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and I
Really
think a lot of
wonderful.
people don't realize that sometimes the solution to the problem goes through changing yourself. So, changing the way that you see the world, changing the way you think, might already be a solution because then the problem stops existing.
Yeah, exactly. And then and we don't always realize it, and it's typically sometimes later we think back. It's like, but how did that problem go away? When how did we solve it? And it was indeed because we start looking in a different way, and we didn't see the problem anymore, or we solved it and we didn't even realize we solved it. I really like that way of looking at the world.
Yes. I have a cartoon that I printed and I have somewhere here in my office. It's two fishes and they're talking. And then one fish says, do you know where the ocean is? And the other one says, it's here, it's around us, everything is the ocean. And the first fish replies, no, that's water. I want to see the ocean. So the way that you
Hmm.
see your environment, that might be the cause of your problems because that fish, they really want to meet the ocean, but they're swimming in it.
Yeah, I have a different version of that joke, but the joke I heard was that one fish asking to the other, "How's the water?" and the other is asking, "What's water?" Not knowing that they're in water, because
Yes.
the exact very same thing. Really wonderful. Let's move to already that last question. Who do you think I should ask next? And I know that you have quite a list of people that you wanted
I
to bring,
do.
and I'm really looking forward. Because you have such a list, I think the easiest way is that I will just show you
Mhm.
some
Yeah.
people, and then you just bring. And I do hope that I brought the right pictures. But
Yeah.
let's start with this person. Who's
Oh,
this?
this is Sarah. Sarah is my mentor. I learned so much from her. She also has a background in psychology, and she has helped me a lot with the transition from psychology to agile. So she's someone that I really admire, and she's the person who says, "Okay, is your psychological you, but what does your agile you tells you about this problem?" So kudos for Sarah for being there for me.
Really nice introduction. The next person was already on the show, but still, I would like you to say why you would want to invite her.
Anita, I didn't see her episode. Well, first of all, I think Anita performs really well on podcasts. I told her she should have her own podcast because she's so good at it. But she is someone that I really admire because she talks a lot about neurodiversity in a way
Hmm.
that is scientifically correct, but also very easy to understand. So I admire how she can get actual facts, actual research, and translate that to a language that anyone can apply.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. It was a wonderful conversation. Uh, for the people who are looking for number 150, was that published? Well, I think we're about 158 that I will publish next Friday. So more than, and by the time yours get published is another some. So let's say 2 3 months ago, this one was published. Let's bring the next person.
Oh, wow. That's my co facilitator at a series of workshops that we are doing now. Our workshops are called Mindful Coaching with Lego Bricks.
Hmm?
So we're going to do the next one on the 29th of this month. I can even send you the link if you want to share with your.
When you say this month, that's
Oh,
29
that's
of
January.
January.
Yes.
this will probably be, I'm pretty sure this will published afterwards, so that
Okay, so when
doesn't
people
help
see
me.
this, we already did the second edition, but we're probably scheduling more editions. It was a
Uh,
success the first time, so we're doing this in other places. And he's the co facilitator with me in that workshop. And he also has a diverse background. He doesn't come from development only, but he also comes from education. He works in an education institution and he's a Scrum Master. So that's very interesting to see how he applies Scrum and Agile to his job as a lecturer.
and so that's indeed, I will add, still add the link to these events so that people can find out more. And I assume when there will be a third edition, it will be published as well. Might be a good thing to decide on that before the 29th, that you can
Yes.
announce it there. So yeah, might be interesting. Let's go to that next question, next person.
Jacobin is also someone that I really admire. I think everyone on this list we can already assume that I admire all of them.
Hmm.
Jacobin works for the Obeya Association in the Netherlands, and she also has a diverse background. She also came from education to agile, and I really admire her way of looking at things in a fun way. She's the kind of person that can actually bring fun to a business environment and still make it valuable. That's something that I'm learning from her because sometimes when we are working together on or when we're discussing something, I see myself very serious because I'm very concentrated on the topic. But even though she is also concentrated and she is giving great suggestions, she's having so much fun. So that's a role model for me because she brings fun to work.
Same time, a bit surprised that you say that you're learning, because well, what you just said about the Lego, that's also some place where people realize that, hey, we combine fun, and by having fun we learn. And I would even say, by the more fun we have, the more we are engaged and the more we learn in these kind of sessions. So yeah, that is really an important thing. If people can bring that, that is indeed something that is and stays important. And just like we said, there is a couple of people, so there's even more. Let's go for the next person.
Next one, Kim. Kim is also a consultant at the company that I work for. We both work for Inquisitive, that's a consultancy in the Netherlands, and they offer Scrum Master, Agile coaches, and testers for technical companies. And I really admire her because she is a very senior professional. She has a long expertise in this field, and yet she's so approachable. When she talks to you, when she teaches something, she makes it feel like you're both at the same level. So if you don't look at her CV, you might not even realize how many things Kim has already done or how much knowledge she carries because she makes herself so humble and approachable. I think that's a very good quality for a coach.
Helps. Well, it's double, because of course we want to teach people and people should feel that we bring something, but we should never give the impression that we're above them and that we know more. And that is, so finding that right balance between, okay, I will help you, and having that knowledge, and people feel the trust, like, okay, we can go for that. Yeah, trust this person. So yeah, that's a really good way. And we still have more. So who's this?
That's Marilia. She works at Scrum Facilitators, also here in the Netherlands. That's another training institution for agile coaches and Scrum Masters. And I met her through her workshops. I admire her professionally. I think she's a young but very wise professional. And I think she has so much to share. So I really like to attend her workshops. And I think everyone should take some time to hear her.
I think this is indeed a little bit what we're doing, having workshops. And I think it's also important that people realize that it's a small community. A lot of us, we know each other and we follow with each other, but we always learn. I think that's the goal indeed. After all these years, even people like me that have been 20 years in, I still do workshops with other people, follow workshop, because I know I learned so much from these things. So by having more different kind of people. Even if they do the same kind of workshop, I always learn something. So that's what keeps it interesting. And there is we still have more people. So
I
who
still
is
have more
this?
people. That's Lidivai. She also works at the consultancy with me. And something that I admire her, well, I admire a lot of things in her, but one thing that I really admire in her is how she still stands as a woman who likes woman things, feminine things, but that doesn't make her less of a professional. So if you meet her in real person, she will probably be wearing pink, and she's very feminine and she likes girl stuff, and she's very sweet, she's very adorable. She's really one of the best friends that I have at work. And I like that even though she brings all of that to her workplace, she's respected by her team, who are mostly men. I think something that I learned in technology is that because there are a lot of men working that field, sometimes you feel the pressure to be less a woman or less feminine, and to be stronger, to be more associated with the stereotypes of men. But she doesn't do that. She has her queen power, and she's herself at work, and she's still very admired for that. So I think she brings that to the table, she brings that conversation, and I admire her for that.
It's really important to stress out that, well, there is the that different insight, or that different way that people, that women look at the world, that is actually, we shouldn't hide it, we should embrace it, because it brings a different kind of thing. And that what I've seen in most companies, in most people, when we add a woman to a team, or multiple ones, that it actually increases in all kind of ways, and not just more human, but also better results in all kind of ways. um, and of course, there could be people that we say, okay, we don't bound with it. That's a different kind of thing, because you have that in both genders, or in all genders, I would say. But yeah, I think it's it's completely, like you say, in the IT, a very unbalanced world. Just like there are other worlds where there's the balance in the opposite. That's also not that healthy.
Yes.
Let's bring on the next person.
That's Esther. She has a very interesting initiative that I volunteer to work with. She is the owner of a website called Agile Gatherings. I don't know if you know this website.
No, I don't.
Well, then you should tag it on your podcast, because that's very valuable website to all Agile professionals. So the website is Agile Gatherings, and what Esther does is she reunites in that website as many information as possible about Agile events happening in the next months all over the world. So we're talking about all continents, we're talking about online, in person, hybrid. Every time you don't know what kind of events you should attend, or what's happening, or what you're missing around your area, or even in the internet, you should go to that website, because she has a lot of information. And something that we started collaborating together last year was creating a blog for that website, because a lot of agile professionals around the world access the website, but they only see the events, they see the dates, they see people who are going to speak at the event, but they don't have a personal view of the attendees, of how the event went after the date passes. So we started together a blog where we invite organizers, speakers, attendees, and volunteers to give their personal perspective of how the event happened. And that's very valuable, because then you can really hear the story of someone who was there. So I volunteered to work on her website. That's completely no profit from my side, but I really believe her mission, that is creating a community where people help each other and build better events.
Really like that. It actually reminds me of one of the initiatives I started. I need to think, back in 2007. I have a Google calendar, which has basically, well, three Google calendars that are maintained by a couple of hundred people around the world, where all the events are also for. So a Google calendar where people can add their own events for their events. Also the call for what's it called again? Call for speakers for is also a separate calendar. And indeed, it's very valuable to have a community of people saying, "Hey, these are things that are interesting to go to." In my case, there's no tool, no website. It's just reusing what's done in Google, because it's, yeah, people can just look and see it in their own calendar. But I definitely believe that there is, yeah, a lot of need, a lot of for these kind of things. What can we follow up? What are more interesting things to do? And then we still have two more names. So there
Yes.
is two more people. Let's bring that last but one person. Who's this?
Oh, so colorful. So this is Ash. She is also from Scrum Facilitators in the Netherlands. I met her attending her workshops, and I would like to say that she has this artistic vein that is amazing. So she is a great photographer, she is a great cartoonist, she draws amazingly. It's amazing. She's like a chat GPT, you know. You ask her to draw something and it looks so good, and you cannot believe a human being did that. And she's now launching her first book about games at work. So that's also something that I'm really looking forward to. When you hear this podcast, people, it's going to be gone, the event already. So you're going to miss it. But the book is out there. So I highly recommend people to read her book and to meet her work because she's very good at what she does.
I hope you can give me the link to that book as
Yes,
well,
I will.
because I can
I have a
I can
lot of
definitely.
links to send you.
So there is indeed a lot of links to send me. And then, oops, I didn't change yet the picture. And then there is that last person to invite. Who's
Yeah, so
this?
last but not least, that's Dorota. And Dorota is not only a great agile coach, but she's also a great actress. I started following her on LinkedIn because she has these sketches with different characters, and each character is an agile framework. And then she gets the characters to talk among themselves, and they have very fun conversations where they explain the principles of the frameworks and the pros and cons of using them. So when I started studying Agile, everything was just theory and books and articles. And then I found her profile and I was laughing at videos where Safe is talking to Scrum and they're discussing something. And I thought, well, now I understand. Not only because of the theory and the articles and the books, but because her video is fun, but it's also a great way of learning. So she brings very interesting, very tough topics, and then she makes them into a fun sketch where you can actually get something back.
I really like that. I really like that. Indeed, it's there's yeah. I didn't hear about these videos, but I'll definitely look into that.
Yeah, you should check it out. It's really
But
fun.
because I think it's a good way, and I've seen similar kind of videos explaining different kind of topics that have nothing to do with agile, and that I really found wonderful to learn about something. And so, yeah, definitely, I think it can bring in value to learn different things. I really want to thank you. We've been talking for a little bit over an
Oh,
hour
yeah.
and a half. Um, Really wonderful time. If people want to connect with you, what would be a good way to connect with you?
Well, I'm very active on LinkedIn. I try to check it at least once a day. So they can connect, they can
So
send me a
that's
message.
this should be the link, if I'm
Yes,
correct.
yes, that's the link for my LinkedIn. And I would love to connect to people. So just connect, send a message, tell me that you saw me here, and let's start a conversation.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, that's what I hope to do, to bring people, that people can say, "Hey, I've learned something," of yeah, connect and yeah, get to know you a little bit better even after today, which for me was a wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot. It was fun as well. And I do know that you still have another event tonight to go to, or
Oh,
another
yes, I
meeting
do. I
to go
have one
to.
at 8.
So, but we should still have enough time for that. But for me, it was really wonderful way of getting to know you, and I do hope that somewhere in the near future we might run into each other at a physical
Oh,
event,
I hope
or
so.
maybe an online event. But still, there's a lot of options there. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for the invitation. I had a lot of fun. It was a very easy conversation. And I hope I actually brought something valuable to the people who are watching.
I do think so, and yeah, it's wonderful discussions. Also, what you explained on the non-violent communication, I think that it was a very nice example. I wasn't sure if I wanted to ask it, and I'm really glad that I did, because
Oh,
I
that's
think
nice.
it was really wonderful way of an example. So for me, yeah, a perfect evening spent, or a
Oh,
perfect
that's
hour and a
nice.
half spent. So I hope that the people find it as well.
Yes.
See you.
See you. Bye
Thank you
bye.
for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.